Hi, everybody. This is Building a Cloud Practice. My name is Mike Duncan with Soliant Consulting. First up, a little bit about me. I am a senior AWS cloud engineer with Soliant Consulting. We primarily have three different practice areas, including FileMaker, Salesforce, and web development. And we just recently added AWS as a distinct practice area. I helped architect our AWS hosting platform that we built up, as well as launching our AWS practice. I'm AWS certified, and I've been working with the platform for over 10 years. So I'll ask a question: why build a cloud practice? Well, it makes sense. You can expand on your existing skills that, if you've already got an existing consultant company, or if you're just working as an independent developer and you want to build a cloud practice, building on that foundation of those existing skills and expanding market of opportunity. There's going to be increased demand out there. I want to show they showed this at reInvent. So this represents the total IT expenditure that estimated that 97% of the total IT spend still comes from your on-prem deployments. All of cloud, so all of AWS, even though it has a giant market share, and Microsoft, they take up the lion's share. All that's only 3% of the total IT spend. So see, this is a big opportunity. Going forward, there's just going to be increased demand. So it's still really early days for cloud. So just a little bit about our journey, how we decided to get started in this, start our AWS practice, and where we wanted to start. We started with our FileMaker practice area, and we ran into a big problem with other vendors out there that were supplying FileMaker servers out there. So this was kind of a pain point for us, and we wanted to provide our clients with better service. And this is kind of baked into our company ethos. The first day hired everybody, all the employees get a copy of this book, The Trusted Advisor. It's a little bit different than the AWS Trusted Advisor, but the whole idea is that, as a subject matter expert, that you're providing that guidance to your clients, that you're becoming their trusted advisor, right, to advise them. So our solution was we wanted to really support the full feature set of the FileMaker platform from top to bottom. And we had an advantage as subject matter experts in that we really have some, a lot of intimate knowledge of the platform. And it's a little bit different than some of your other traditional database or application platforms out there. So we've actually got some staff on hand that worked at FileMaker, worked at Apple in the past, so could really provide that expertise. And we were really drawn to AWS in particular because of that enterprise level of service that can scale all the way down to a lot of our clients are just they're small businesses, so we're able to offer that enterprise level of service to those type of clients, and it's really empowering, as well as offering some consistency across as we're hosting for our clients to have this consistent level of service instead of this vendor over here does things one way, this hosting provider over here does things another way. So it kind of cut a lot of that out. And it's been really encouraging to see this growing as a practice for us, being able to expand on that offering. So where we started out with FileMaker is kind of our thin edge of the wedge going in. We're now expanding out, doing all the kinds of other kinds of services that we're offering. and growing our AWS team. I think we're up to 7 AWS certified developers. So part of our cloud strategy is planning for this service and understanding the operational impact that this is going to have on us as an organization. So we have had, like in our past, we had tried to offer hosting before where it didn't work out so great. So we backed off of that. That was back before, the cloud was as big as it was. So there was a little bit of a bad feeling about that. So it took a little convincing, but we were able to successfully launch this thing. And quite frankly, we have had, almost zero problems with it. But involved in that is designing a lot of business processes. So a lot of this was non-technical. We spent a lot of time developing these processes and really thinking them through, both internally and client-facing, right? And deciding on the eventual exact architecture that we wanted to use. So this led us to really take a fresh look at what we had before, what we're all familiar with IT, and really looking at what's available, all the different, you get that wall of services in AWS or even Azure. This is more geared towards AWS since that's the direction we went with, but it let us take advantage of cloud infrastructure. And I want to talk about a particular case study just to illustrate some of these points. Backups. So in the database world, when you're talking about backups, there's a little bit more than just straight backing up a file system, right? You've got database tables in a state you need to pause all transactions, then write out to the volume. And this can be time consuming and costly in terms of disk activity and processor. So we looked at one of the options, keeping the traditional backups and just writing out to S3 and providing backups that way. Well, that had a few problems, in particular with our particular platform. There's certain circumstances where you can have a lot of different files. So that's where we saw a bottleneck there. And so we looked at using snapshots instead. And I know snapshots have been around in the just in a virtual host environment, but taking a look at how they'd worked on in the cloud really gave us some opportunity for improvement there. So some of the technical challenges, as I mentioned, like the database compatibility, needing to pause the database, get it in a safe state to do the snapshot, and then resume it. So this pretty much happens instantaneously, which is a big advantage over the traditional backups where especially on a big system with a lot of users involved, you could really feel that pause. And then once we get those backups, organizing those and making those available. So we coined a term Snapbacks, and it's kind of a combination of snapshots and backups, right? And this allows us, building our own system, we're able to dynamically define our retention policies. So if we need to adjust it up or down, we can do that very easily, and also make them customer accessible. So this is an example of the interface for that, where we have these different snapshots listed out and have them marked, whether we're retaining them daily, weekly, monthly. There's also a big cost advantage to doing it this way because snapshots are stored as S3. So whereas your block storage is a lot more expensive, and especially on a bigger system, that can really add up. Whereas snapshots, there's some magic going on behind the scenes at AWS that only stores the delta of difference between snapshots. So especially on a big database system, say 500 gig or up, we've got some quite large ones that present their own challenges, these are really an advantage in terms of both the backup speed and the amount of backups that we can have. So what happens if a customer wants to access one of those backups? There's a lot of steps that go on behind the scenes where we've taken advantage of this scriptable architecture, right, to create a volume back behind the scenes. We tag it for cost allocation, attach it to the instance, and bring that online in the OS, assign it a drive letter. So when that volume becomes available, the client gets an email. We also create a virtual FTP directory, and they can then, in their email client, they get email instructions with, and they see that as available as just a folder, and are able to access their own backups via secure FTP, right? And all the charges are allocated automatically in our tracking system. See, another example of how we've taken advantage is by expanding our organization into different AWS accounts. And this was a challenge because all of our scripting and all our automation and tooling, it was pretty much geared towards just one account, but we really wanted to make this push. We make this in the last year, and this has been a big benefit to us because this allows us to, while we still maintain consolidated billing that's transparent to our clients, we get some economies of scale in terms of those different accounts and the different instances running those accounts. They still just apply to the one account. This allows us to structure those different accounts in organizational units. We can have even whole accounts dedicated to, say, dev or UAT or prod environments, and minimize the blast radius between those. It also allows us to branch out and really offer any and all services that AWS has. Some of these services you're not able to tag at all. So this allows us to know which charges are coming from which clients and how to bill accordingly. We know that everything that happens in a particular account gets allocated to a particular client. So I want to talk a bit about not so much about a particular example that we have, but more in general. When you're starting a cloud practice, these different perspectives, and we often think of things in the technology perspective, but technology is often a minor part of a cloud migration project. Right, you have project management, which can't be understated. A lot of communication on both sides of the fence, like the different stakeholders involved, and planning, right? Planning is very important. This is a quote attributed to Dwight Eisenhower that I know our CEO likes to repeat. Plans are worthless, but planning is everything. So a little bit more about project management. You should really look at project management as a must, and don't underestimate this. This should be a part of your process, part of your DNA as you go forward. Kind of build this in, and you want to include time for that. This is often overlooked in estimating out any project. It's easy for us to just focus on the technical requirements and not include any of this administrative time, but it is required, and it will pay off in the end, and it'll actually keep the project on track and overall cost down on both sides of the fence, so for the clients and for you. I would really suggest investing in good project management tools and project management methodologies. Internally at our company at Soliant, we're really big on Agile, but this is kind of a general focus. So if you've got something, it works for you, but don't overlook project management. I want to bring up the cloud adoption framework, and this is a general kind of framework that's out there, and there's several different kind of flavors of it. AWS has their own whole page dedicated to this, to the resources that they make available. And it's really about a process of defining the business and technical requirements and looking across these different perspectives, right? So considering the entire business perspective, all the people within it, as well as like governance, and then kind of crossing where those cross with when you consider platform security and operations. This will help you, by creating an action plan. This will help you identify potential issues as well as get buy-in from stakeholders, right? And really help communicate the points. This will help you identify like which areas you might need training on, or which areas might require a change in process. And then, you as in your role, you need to be a boundary spanner and kind of bridge that gap between all the different perspectives here, all the different stakeholders. And then there's the address for the cloud adoption framework. I recommend checking that out. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the well-architected framework. This is a document that AWS puts forward, and it's really a set of questions to evaluate if a solution is aligned with established best practices. It's based on 5 pillars, and they actually dig pretty deep and they have a white paper on each individual pillar, right? Starting with operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. There's the address for where that's hosted on AWS. Even if you're not in AWS, this isn't really particular to anything technical in AWS, but I have found it, these principles can be very generally applied and can really inform your view as you take on any project. You can have these 5 kind of things in the back of your mind, to consider with whatever you're planning. So hopefully, as I've demonstrated before, there is an opportunity for innovation and rethinking these traditional methodologies, right? Lift and shift doesn't always apply. You're not going to always be able to apply the same kind of thinking when you move from on-prem to cloud. Some of the things just don't really fit. If you try and just directly apply a lot of the same things that you were doing in an on-prem environment, maybe those costs are going to be a lot higher in cloud unless you kind of rethink and take advantage of some of those processes. So some of those will need to evolve. So you should look at those and keeping in mind those five principles from like a well-architected framework. Those are big. And that kind of leads into, adapting and embracing the capabilities that you have in cloud. It's always a good idea to study up on what's out there, the cloud adoption framework and those best practices, right? And keep up to date because this is a moving target. I know at reInvent this past year, this was a big kind of idea going around that this is an evolving architecture and always improving. So even within, a lot of these services, there's always new stuff that becomes available and, processes change. Um, this chart I like to show because it really shows like the difference between a traditional like on-prem architecture as you're building out, trying to scale up to meet demand, and the contrast between that and how you can scale up and down elastically, right? In with some cloud infrastructure, building up, scaling both up and down to meet demand as needed, without missing opportunity. And I would say this kind of extends from, this kind of shows the contrast between on-prem and cloud, but I would say that this kind of also extends to, even in your cloud architecture, as things change, things evolve, there are new things that come along. For example, we were looking at just writing out files to S3 and found a better way. Like our whole process has kind of evolved along with the capabilities and what's out there. So there's new services, new things coming out every day. The opportunity to innovate is always going to be there and always fresh. So certification and partnership too, I think it's important to call these out if you're building an AWS practice or a cloud practice. Develop a strategy for certification. Set some targets, set some real timelines to keep motivated. I know in a lot of cloud certification, you don't just get a certification, you sit on it for years, you get to recertify. So there's always kind of this target there. But this will help empower your team, getting people certified, getting people trained, and providing options for, lay out some clear guidelines, take time to write up some, like a help page directing people, where to go get training, if they need a sandbox environment to do some testing in, how to do that, how to keep their expenses down. And then don't be afraid to look at different partnerships. I know in AWS, they have a Amazon Partner Network, and this gives you access if you go through the process. It does give you access to some additional resources just at AWS themselves, and some marketing materials and some different opportunities there. You should also look at strategic partnerships. A lot of times there's so many different avenues, so many different things. Even looking at the tracks here, you have IoT and machine learning, and not to mention the big compute, storage, and so on. There is a tendency to specialize. So as you kind of find your niche and specialize, you may have clients that have needs outside of what you provide. So it's easy to find other experts in that area. Okay, just to summarize. So are you thinking of building a cloud practice? Well, the answer probably should be yes, but if not, why not? I mean, there's plenty of good reasons for doing it, and even if the answer is no, and you just you're happy being the in-house developer, hopefully some of these same principles and stuff can be informative to you and help you on your path, even if you're not ready at the moment. Plan ahead, right? Planning is everything. Stay flexible, pay attention to new services, and try and keep on top of that. And continue to evolve and continue to look for opportunity. And then, like I said, reach out. Lots of room for specialization, lots of opportunity for you to find your niche in this overall. So that's all I had. I'll look in the chat for questions.
I did move the one question that we had from David into the chat bar for you, Mike, if you would like to read that out.
Yeah, I feel like AWS well-architected framework can apply to every cloud, even on-prem. I think other cloud providers have their, stop sharing for a minute. Can't read. There. I think other cloud providers have their own documents, sure, but the AWS one is still worth a read. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I know even I've recommended it to, across our different practice areas, whether it's FileMaker or our web development team. It's just a really solid set of principles, lays a good foundation to have all those things in mind.